What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, talking to you live on Facebook late in the day on Wednesday. Just got off the radio. Thought I'd jump on here and say hello to everyone and see how you're doing and see what's on your minds as the summer starts to kick off here, and we think the Packers are 3, 4, 5 weeks away from kicking off camp, but that doesn't mean that there's not Packers questions to be asked and there isn't stuff to talk about. Whether it's Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers talking on the phone, or Mike Pettine's defense, whatever's on your mind, or trains rolling by. Randy, hello. Chris, I'm doing well. It's a little cooler today in New York. It's only like 85 rather than 95 and humid. Joe, what's up? Wayne, thanks for joining us, man. Richard, gotcha. Which team in the NFC North has the worst QB situation? Woo, that's a hot one right out of the gate. Worst QB situation, man, I gotta be honest. I gotta say it's Chicago. I mean, Trubisky's got a lot of promise, but there isn't a whole lot of production and or tape there to make you think, yeah, they've got it solved. Obviously, in Green Bay, you've got Aaron Rodgers. You do question what's behind him. In Minnesota, I think Kirk Cousins is a bit of an upgrade from what they had last year, though not a major one. And Matt Stafford, I think, is vastly underrated by most of the national media and some fans, but I think he can play. I would have to say Chicago. Southern Cali, what's up, Jerry? Astoria Aaron, train denizen. Yeah, lots of trains. James, hello. Stefano, thanks for checking in, man. So do you expect the Packers to re-sign Wilkerson, or could we hope for a third-round comp pick? Oh, you mean if he walks? Well, I think let's let it play out first. Do you have a prediction for an overall record in 2018? Ask me at the end of camp. I always give that out after the last preseason game. What is going on with Winston Moss, or has he always been bad in press conferences? He's been okay in press conferences. He started this kind of thing where he hates the press last year. We're not really sure why. But he's allowed, He's fulfilling his NFL obligations, and I thank him for it. What's up in Colorado? How you doing, man? There are plants over here. What do you call that? That's green? That's a plant? We haven't gone shopping for our summer flowers yet. I'd like a package with Cobb and Ty in the backfield together. I think you'll get that. I don't think you'll get it extensively, but every NFL pundit rates the Vikings as, sorry, went too fast, but if you're saying to be the first in the NFC North, it's hard to dismiss that. It's hard to disagree with it, right? And they undoubtedly have a better defense. They've upgraded at quarterback, and they have some serious offensive weaponry. Now, where you could quibble is that they've changed offensive coordinators, and you never really kind of know what's going to happen there. But the Vikings are no joke. There's no doubt about that. Why don't we get Kevin Green back? I believe he's coaching someplace else. Is there any possible way that Scantling moves Cobb down the chart? Oh, highly doubt it, Jordan. He's not very different types of receivers. And as I've said often, and I said to a couple people on Twitter today, I think Cobb is going to surprise a lot of people this season. Pundits are hung up on Cousins' deal, overrated? Possibly. I mean, a lot of times on offense last year, they were kind of bogged down by the fact that they didn't have a top-flight quarterback. I still think Cousins, while not in the same zip code as Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, I do believe he's an upgrade from what they had last year. The Vikings are always a joke. Maybe, but they were the joke that was clad in purple and yellow and whatever in Lambeau Field last year, celebrating first place. Rodgers' contract done yet? Not yet, Robert. I would expect it right before camp starts. What beer are we drinking tonight, Aaron? Neil, that would be a Newcastle Brown Ale. Any chance Rodgers' deal isn't done by week 1? Absolutely, there's a chance. I don't expect it, but it's definitely not a certainty. Do you think J-Mom will beat out Allison for wide receiver 3? Way too early. Way too early to say as far as any kind of roster battles. Let's let the pads come on and give these guys a chance to show what they can do, especially the younger guys. It's all, I've said it a bunch here, it's all well and good to run around in shorts, but it doesn't mean a hill of beans until the pads come on. Do you think our weakness is still at the corner position? I think they've upgraded at corner. I don't know how much. Like I say, we got to see these guys on the field against NFL competition, pads on, hitting, etc. But I think they've upgraded there. I would say, looking at the roster, I was looking at it actually yesterday and thinking the one big question mark remains at right tackle. And then, inside linebacker. I know Blake Martinez had an excellent year last year, but outside of him, there's a lot of question marks. Whether it's Jake Ryan, whether it's Oren Burks, whatever the plan is there. Now maybe they drop down Josh Jones into a hybrid role. Maybe they do some other things. Maybe they move Clay Matthews, but it's still not exactly a position of strength. How do you see Oren Burks being used? It's a good question. I think he'll be used a lot in passing situations early on. I think when they go to nickel, I think he'll get a lot of looks. I think it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him and Martinez on obvious passing downs, because I think Burks has the potential to supplant him there, but that's all it is right now, is potential. Martinez, I know, gets a bad rap for his coverage ability, and some of that is warranted, but I also think you can look at a lot of plays last year where he's in position to make a big play and just doesn't hold on to the football, but he's in position and he defends the pass, etc. I think he's improved in that area, but I am intrigued at Burks' athleticism to see what he can bring to the defense. How is Kaiser doing? Chris, it's been up and down. I think he really needs to hit the playbook over this break, but it'll be interesting to see he and Hundley battle it out once the bullets go live, so to speak. Does Kendricks get cut if Bird performs well in training camp? I'm not saying that's an automatic yes, but I think it's a possibility. Who's the most excited draft pick for the upcoming season? Exciting draft pick? That's a good question. I'd say Jair Alexander. And I know that's kind of chalk, but his skill set is unlike anything else they have on the roster. And he has the potential to be a real playmaker all over the defensive formation. Time to say goodbye to Mays at running back? Not necessarily. I mean, let's let him take a few snaps before we run him out the club, so to speak. I know he had the 2 fumbles last year, but that doesn't mean he can't play. At the end of last summer, I thought he was the best back on the roster. Then he didn't get a chance until that Baltimore game, and then he fumbled twice, which obviously is not good. But I'll just remind you, Aaron Jones, who I think a lot of people are very excited about, fumbled on his very first snap in training camp last year without being touched. These guys, sometimes it gets in their heads, sometimes they make mistakes and don't bounce back, but let's give Mays at least a week or 2 in training camp before we cut him. Good question. Which team in the NFC North do we match up best against? I gotta say Detroit. I think Darius Slay had a really good way of clamping down on Jordy Nelson. I think he'll struggle a little bit more with Devontae Adams, and because of that, I think would be the answer. And it's a pretty simplistic one, but Vic Fangio, I think, has always defended McCarthy and Rodgers very well, as has Mike Zimmer. And I think, with Detroit, you have the ability to move the ball at a much easier rate, as opposed to against Minnesota and Chicago, which have, their coaching staffs have traditionally done a much better job against McCarthy and Rodgers. Who's the best receiving back after Montgomery? Michael, numbers would tell you it's Jamal Williams. I think Aaron Jones has the ability. He dropped a couple of passes, easy passes last year that he shouldn't have. But Williams was pretty darn productive when he was given the shot last year. Trevor Davis could be cut. Seems to only have a role in special teams at this point. Matthew, I agree. I think if Jair Alexander runs away with a returning job, I think that's a definite possibility. Must visit a store or restaurant? Ooh, good question. I will say Telly's Taverna on 23rd Avenue. Also, make sure you check out Gregory's Corner. And I also really like, it's the place right up on Ditmars. His name is, I'm blanking on it. It'll come to me. What's the most underrated development? Good question. Development of Kofi Amichia. We'll see when the pads come on. It's really hard to get any kind of feel for any of the linemen, offensive or defensive, when they're running around in shorts. I know the Packers were kind of disappointed last year that he didn't develop at all throughout camp. He looked pretty much as lost at the end of camp as he did at the beginning of it. But that is a guy that has definitely kind of been lost in the wash, so to speak, this offseason, as far as just pure name recognition. Let's see if the pads come on and see if he can take a jump. 4-3 or 3-4 defense with our team structure, Justin, they'll definitely be based 3-4 principles. They may use some 4-man fronts from time to time. Mike Pettine has said as much, but they'll be rooted in the 3-4 that Pettine learned under Rex Ryan. Chance of bringing in a veteran wide receiver, Chase, I would tend to think that will only happen if there's an injury. Maybe if they get to camp and a bunch, let's say 2 or 3 of the wide receivers, the rookie wide receivers, are not kind of living up to the hype, so to speak. But I tend to think they'll sink or swim with what they've got. Does Jamon make the 3 spot? Well, it really depends on what you mean. If you mean the perimeter opposite Devontae Adams, I think he has a shot. I think a lot of it will depend on how strong he comes out of the gate in camp. If you're talking about, say, the slot against, displacing Cobb, I don't think there's a chance in hell of that happening. Do you think the defense is going to be more aggressive under Pettine? I mean, that's a subjective thing, isn't it? Dom Capers blitzed quite a bit, and it didn't mean much as far as the perception of aggressiveness. I think they'll be a little bit more aggressive at the line of scrimmage with their defensive backs, and I think that will be a notable difference. I think he likes to play a lot more press man, even press zone, but I think that'll be the most notable difference as far as aggressiveness goes. I think that our secondary will be better this year and great in the coming years. I think the potential is there. But let's see him in pads. Let's see him against NFL level competition before we crown anybody. Is McCarthy coaching for his job this season? I mean, I know the cliched answer would be every coach is coaching for his job every year. That's what Mike would tell you. I think a little bit. I don't think there's any question. He's only got that 1-year extension. The year sets up for them to be, they have a chance to make a run, get to a Super Bowl. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy and they go on a deep playoff run, I think he's fine, regardless of what happens in the postseason. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy and they go 9-7, even 10-6, and miss the playoffs, I think he's fired. And obviously, 8-8 or below, I think he's done. But I think for the most part, if they do what they usually do, which is, qualify for the playoffs and then win a game or two, then yeah, I think he sticks around. But I do think it is more precarious now than it has been at any point in Mike's career. Nick, do we keep 4 tight ends? I definitely think there's a chance they keep 4 tight ends if Bird really kind of makes himself invaluable as far as contributions not only from scrimmage but also on special teams, where, look, that's where he's got the edge over those top 3 guys, because maybe Kendricks is contributing on special teams, but I don't see much outside of maybe field goal protection from Lewis. Jimmy Graham may run it on special teams. So, you know, I think Bird has a shot. And heck, if he's good enough, as we mentioned earlier in the video, maybe even displaces Kendricks, which is a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's definitely, you know, something that you got to watch out for. Do the rookie receivers have a better chance at making the roster than Clark and Yancey? Not necessarily. I mean, I think their athletic gifts will certainly help them. But, you know, Clark is nothing to sneeze at as far as athleticism goes. And he knows the offense, has a year in it. But he is much greener, much rawer as a prospect. Though he did have 2 games to showcase what he can do last season. And Yancey, he came on strong at the end of camp last year, but he was a bit of a forgotten man last year, for the most part. So, you know, I think it will all come down to what kind of distribution they have rep-wise in camp and who makes the most of those opportunities. Because, look, you're running lots of 3-4 wide receiver sets. You're running them with 2 or 3, 4 different quarterbacks. The opportunities are going to be ample. The biggest thing you can do as a wide receiver is to make the most of every single one of those reps, whether you get the ball or not. A lot of that stuff, you know, it will come down to determining how guys are performing away from the ball when the ball's not thrown to them. And, of course, always the great equalizer, special teams. It's who does the most on special teams, because that's the weight of the roster, especially for rookies and second-year guys. So there you go. All right, everybody, I'm going to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. Hope you all have a good night. I'll talk to you soon.